April 22nd, 2025. It's hard to even picture it. The Bicerin Valley near Pahalgam, it's often called mini Switzerland. Just stunningly beautiful.
It really is an almost picture-perfect image of Kashmir's serenity.
But that image was just shattered. 26 tourists plus one local guide killed in a terror attack. It's just horrific.
Truly horrific. And it immediately makes you think, this is the deadliest attack since Pulwama back in 2019.
Right. But Pulwama targeted CRPF personnel.
Yes.
This is different.
Exactly. The target here was civilians, tourists, and worse, the reports, which seem credible, suggest they were segregated, targeted based on religion.
That's a chilling detail. Something we haven't seen quite like this in Kashmir recently, has it?
No, not on this scale and not this overt. It's deeply disturbing. And then there was that message left behind.
Go tell your government and Modi. Just brazen.
Incredibly so. Now, initially, the Resistance Front, the TRF, they claimed it.
Yeah, I saw that. But then they denied it.
They did, which isn't totally out of character for these groups.
Yeah.
Plausible deniability and all that.
But intelligence agencies seem pretty convinced this has ISI fingerprints all over it, don't they? Pakistan's intelligence service.
That's the strong indication, yes. Despite the TRF denial, the assessment points towards ISI involvement, perhaps directing or enabling the attack.
So the big question then is, why? What's Pakistan's angle here? I mean, they've got their own serious problems right now.
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Pakistan's facing, significant economic instability, major tensions on its borders with Afghanistan, even with Iran.
So could this be, a diversion? Trying to reignite the Kashmir issue on the world stage?
That's one theory. Trying to internationalize Kashmir again, maybe deflect from domestic criticism. Or perhaps it was a miscalculation.
A miscalculation? How so?
Maybe they underestimated how India would react this time, misjudged the current political climate, India's resolve. It's possible they thought they could get away with it with less blowback.
India's reaction was certainly swift. Prime Minister Modi cut his trip short, flew straight back to Delhi.
And pointedly avoided Pakistani airspace on the way back. That itself was a signal.
Definitely. And that immediate emergency meeting at the airport tarmac itself, with NSA Doval, the service chiefs, that sends a message of seriousness, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It telegraphs intent, no delay, immediate high-level consultation. This wasn't going to be treated lightly.
Then came Modi's public statement in Bihar. Very strong words.
Very strong. And significantly, parts of it were delivered in English. The vow to hunt down terrorists to the ends of the earth, inflict unimaginable punishment.
That wasn't just for the domestic audience, was it?
No. Clearly aimed internationally, projecting resolve, setting expectations, putting the world on notice about India's stance.
And then you have Ajit Doval, the national security advisor. He's got this reputation for, unpredictability.
His line, "Every operation is a first," sort of sums it up. It implies they won't just repeat past responses. Keeps everyone guessing.
So, thinking about those past responses, Uri in 2016, Pulwama in 2019, what did India learn from those, and how might that influence things now?
Well, they're crucial reference points. After the Uri attack on the army base, the response was the surgical strikes.
Right, across the line of control, targeting launch pads.
Exactly. They were publicly declared, relatively limited in scope, focused on specific terror infrastructure in Poka. The key was precision and signaling resolve without massive escalation.
Pulwama, though, that felt different. The scale of the attack, a suicide bombing on a convoy, it seemed to demand something bigger.
It did. And the response was the Balakot airstrikes. That was unprecedented.
Flying deep into Pakistan, hitting that Jaish-e-Mohammed camp.
Yes, deep inside Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Indian Air Force jets crossing the international border for a strike for the first time since the 1971 war. That was a major strategic shift.
Can you remind us a bit about the operation itself? It was quite complex, wasn't it?
Oh, very. Mirage 2000s delivering the ordnance, the Spice 2000 precision bombs, Sukhoi 30s providing air cover, Falcon AWSCSE, and Netra AEW&C systems coordinating. It was a large, complex package.
And India framed it carefully, didn't they? Non-military preemptive action.
That phrasing was key, designed to justify the action under international law, focusing on preventing future attacks rather than pure retaliation. It showed a new willingness to take risks and escalate significantly.
Then Pakistan retaliated. There was that dogfight. the capture of Wing Commander Abhinan Borthman.
Right. And his swift release was framed, quite effectively, as a diplomatic win for India under international pressure. Balakot really changed the calculus. It showed India could and would strike deep.
So Uri was surgical strikes across the Law Sea. Balakot was airstrikes deep inside Pakistan. Doval says every operation is a first, so repeating either seems unlikely.
Less likely, yes, especially given the current context. And one immediate consequence of Pahalgam seems to be the unraveling of the ceasefire along the Law Sea.
That ceasefire, the 2003 agreement, reaffirmed just back in 2021, it was fragile, but holding, more or less.
It was. Despite Uri and Balakot, both sides had largely maintained it since that 2021 understanding. But almost immediately after Pahalgam, reports came in of Pakistan initiating firing across multiple sectors.
And India responded.
India reported giving a befitting reply, which is the standard terminology. But the ceasefire breaking down so quickly is significant.
Why would Pakistan do that? Break the ceasefire right after an attack they know will provoke India. Seems counterintuitive.
It does. Again, maybe it's aimed domestically. General Asim Munir, the army chief, has been quite vocal on Kashmir. Maybe it's shoring up internal support, projecting strength amidst economic weakness.
Or just miscalculation again. A risky strategy regardless.
A very risky strategy. It plays into India's narrative and could backfire badly if India decides on a strong military response.
Speaking of responses, India's initial moves weren't kinetic, were they? More diplomatic and economic.
Correct. The Cabinet Committee on Security met quickly, and the first major actions targeted Pakistan on other fronts.
Like suspending participation in the Indus Waters Treaty mechanisms. That's huge.
It's monumental, historically speaking. That treaty has survived wars, decades of hostility. It's fundamental to Pakistan's water security.
Can India actually cut off the water, though?
Right.
Would they lack the infrastructure right now?
The immediate physical impact might be limited by current infrastructure, yes. India can't just turn off the taps overnight. But the signal it sends is massive. It's leveraging a vital resource, and the potential long-term threat is immense for Pakistan.
And Pakistan's reaction showed how seriously they took it, calling it an act of war.
Absolutely. It hits a critical vulnerability. Then there were the other steps.
Expelling military attachés, downsizing the High Commission staff.
Standard diplomatic tools to show extreme displeasure. Reduces channels of communication, signals a breakdown in relations.
And closing the Atari-Wagah border, suspending visa services.
That hits trade, people-to-people contact. Even suspending medical visas, which India often granted on humanitarian grounds, sends a very harsh message.
Pakistan retaliated there too, right? Closing airspace, suspending trade.
They did. It shows they're feeling the pressure, but also escalates the tit-for-tat measures. The overall aim for India seems clear. Economic pain, diplomatic isolation.
Now let's talk about something else that's been floated. The Navy. Could that be part of the unpredictable response?
It's a very interesting possibility and strategically quite sound. The Navy operates in international waters, so it's less constrained by the low sea or international borders in the same way the Army or Air Force are.
So what could they do? A blockade?
Not necessarily a full blockade, which is an act of war, but deploying warships, maybe carrier battle groups to the northern Arabian Sea, stationing them prominently near Pakistan's sea lanes of communication, or SLOCs.
How would that work as pressure?
It could significantly disrupt Pakistan's maritime trade, increase insurance premiums for ships going to Pakistani ports, delay shipments, impact energy imports. It applies economic pressure without firing a shot, without crossing into Pakistani territory.
That sounds very much in line with Doval's thinking. Unpredictable, avoids repeating past actions, potentially cost-effective in terms of risk.
Exactly. It fits the mold of seeking alternative ways to impose costs. A naval show of force, or even just sustained presence operations in that area, would be a novel form of pressure compared to past responses.
So, bringing it back to Doval's broader strategic principles.
Right.
You mentioned unpredictability. What else?
Key elements of his known thinking include: always assume the worst-case scenario when planning, strip objectives down to their absolute core essentials, and above all, maintain calm, rational decision-making, even under pressure.
How do we see that playing out now?
The initial measured response diplomatic and economic steps first reflects that calm approach, not rushing into military action. The focus seems to be clearly on neutralizing the attackers and their sponsors, the core objective.
And the assume worst case part.
That probably means planning for potential Pakistani retaliation to any Indian action, however limited, and having countermoves ready. It also means considering unconventional responses beyond just strikes.
Like what? Cyber warfare.
Cyber operations targeting ISI networks or terror financing channels, certainly. Information warfare to expose Pakistan's links to the attack. Maybe even leveraging AI for more sophisticated border surveillance and intelligence gathering in Kashmir. Things that are effective but perhaps less escalatory than conventional military options.
But hovering over all of this is the nuclear shadow. Both countries have nuclear weapons. That has to be the ultimate break, right?
It's the unavoidable reality. The nuclear dimension imposes caution on both sides. It prevents conflicts from escalating beyond a certain threshold, hopefully. We saw that after Balakot, tensions were incredibly high, but both sides eventually pulled back from the brink.
Does the current global situation affect that? Like, the U.S. seems pretty distracted elsewhere.
That could be a factor. Less capacity or willingness for major powers to step in and mediate forcefully might change the risk calculus for both India and Pakistan. It potentially raises the stakes.
And how do you read Pakistan's counter-moves so far? The ceasefire violations, the diplomatic expulsions, are they trying to escalate or?
It's complex. It could be partly for domestic show, partly genuine anger, partly trying to signal their own red lines. But it might also contain elements of seeking de-escalation pathways, showing they can retaliate but hoping to avoid all-out conflict. It's a tense signaling game.
Meanwhile, internationally, how has the reaction been to the Pahalgam attack itself?
Broad condemnation. The UN Security Council condemned it unequivocally. India received messages of solidarity from many countries.
And India has been actively briefing ambassadors, making its case.
Very actively. There's a clear diplomatic push to build international pressure on Pakistan, highlighting its alleged role in sponsoring terror. The goal is isolation.
Has it been effective?
It seems to be gaining traction. Even the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, which usually backs Pakistan on Kashmir, has found it difficult to defend this kind of attack on civilians. Pakistan seems increasingly isolated on this issue.
So India's strategy looks like maybe some kind of limited military action combined with intense diplomatic and economic pressure.
That seems to be the approach taking shape, combining, as some analysts put it, clinical military action if and when it happens with mature diplomatic outreach.
So looking forward, what are the specific scenarios we might see? If not a repeat of Uri or Balakot, then what?
Well, short-term kinetic options could include things like targeted drone strikes, maybe hitting specific launch pads or militant leaders in POC using better tech than in 2016, and Uri 2.0, but with more precision, potentially less risk.
And on the non-kinetic side?
Continued economic pressure is almost certain. Sustained naval deployments near Pakistan's coast, maybe exploring higher tariffs or pushing harder for international sanctions, like getting Pakistan back on the FATF gray list or even blacklist.
What about cyber and information warfare?
Highly likely.
Yeah.
Disrupting communication networks, exposing financial trails, maybe leaking intelligence about ISI involvement, undermining Pakistan's narrative and capabilities internally and externally.
And longer term within Kashmir itself.
Strengthening the security grid is ongoing. More technology surveillance, sensors, but also, hopefully, continued efforts on community engagement, winning hearts and minds, addressing local grievances to reduce the space for militancy to operate. That's crucial for lasting peace.
So the overall goal seems to be inflict pain, raise the cost for Pakistan significantly, but try to keep it below the threshold of a major war.
That appears to be the tightrope India is trying to walk. Maximum impact, minimum uncontrolled escalation. Deter future attacks by making the price unbearably high for the sponsors.
But amidst all this strategy, geopolitics, potential actions, we have to come back to the human element. 27 people went to Baisaran Valley expecting beauty and peace.
And met with unimaginable violence. That loss, that human tragedy is the core of this. The families grieving, the survivors traumatized. It's easy to get lost in the strategic analysis, but we can't forget the victims.
And India's response, whatever form it takes, is also about delivering some measure of justice for them, isn't it? Restoring faith that the nation can protect its citizens.
Absolutely. It's about accountability. It's about ensuring that people, whether residents or tourists, can feel safe. The desire for justice and security in Kashmir is palpable, and it fuels the demand for a strong, effective response from the government.
This Pahalgam attack feels like a really significant moment then, a challenge to India's security, its strategy, its resolve.
It certainly is. A major escalation, forcing a reevaluation. India's response will be shaped by the lessons of Uri and Balakot, but also by this current doctrine of unpredictability and a multifaceted approach.
And the outcome depends on so many factors. Pakistan's internal situation, the international reaction, the careful calibration of India's own actions.
Precisely. It's an incredibly complex situation, balancing the need for a robust response against the dangers of wider conflict in a nuclearized region.
As we wrap up this deep dive, it leaves you thinking about that balance. Justice versus stability. And perhaps, what are the unintended consequences? What ripples might spread from whatever happens next in ways we can't yet foresee?
That's the crucial question to ponder. Beyond the immediate crisis, what are the long-term implications for peace, security, and the very nature of how these conflicts are managed in the 21st century? There are always unseen consequences.